This is a super unusual video for me because it kind of goes against everything that I did for a long time. So let me preface this by saying I have never really been a consistent reader. I've read a lot of books, but I never really got into the habit of reading consistently and reading more than just one book and then stopping. And it actually started out exactly how it always did before, where I would read one book and then just stop and be like, wow, that was such a good book. I'm done reading for now. This reading challenge that I gave myself this year of reading 12 books in a year, which, one a month, that's pretty achievable. It didn't start off super well because I read a book, and I'm going to tell you which one it is, of course. I read it, and then I stopped reading until the end of August when our story picks up again. So this is my big 12 books review video. And I guess, will I be uploading this in specific parts? Or rather than review all 12 books in one video, I think I'm just going to do it like this, where I split them into the sections of 4 so I can do 3 books at once, because that's just easier and more digestible. So anyway, I had a goal for this year to finally really get into reading for the first time in my life. I'm going to read consistently. I'm going to finally read those books that I had always thought sounded good, or I really loved the title of, or ooh, its book cover looks so good, it looks so sophisticated. That's the kind of book I want to read, rather than just saying that for a million years. This year, 2023, was going to be the year that I finally did that and got into it and finally started reading all those books that I thought looked super cool. So the first book that I read this year, I started reading in January when in my first year of school, when I got back from the winter break in January of 2023. The first book I started reading was A Little Life. Now, I don't have my paperback copy here because it's at my house, because I didn't bring it back with me to school because I've already read it. So I don't have it here to hold and show you, but I do have the ebook on my iPad, which my iPad has just become a giant e-reader now, because that's literally all I use it for. Like, I just open that, read for about an hour each day, which is my typical goal, which, oh my goodness, now I'm thinking about it, I don't know if I met my reading goal yesterday. Wait, did it? Okay, maybe it did, because it's saying extend your 11-day reading streak. Record is 11 days. Okay, maybe it did count. I don't remember spending an hour reading it, but maybe it did, I don't know. A Little Life is a very long book. I've always been drawn to long books because I've never been able to write one. So the thought of being able to really tackle that kind of book in writing seemed a lot more thrilling. I don't know. It drew me to reading long books, right? So that's what I wanted to do. So A Little Life is just over 300,000 words long, which is not the longest book in the world, but to put it into context, I guess, the average version of the Bible, we're talking Old plus New Testament Bible, is around 750 to 800,000 words long, right? So this book being 300,000, it's a little less than half the length of the Bible, right? So that's a pretty big book. And my paperback copy was just over 800 pages long. So this was really inspiring to me. And I loved the title so much. And I'd watched 2 reviews of this book from 2 different channels, and actually a few others, because this was really popular. Like, this book was all over YouTube for a long time. So I really wanted to read it, and so I spent a year thinking about reading it, still really knowing nothing about the plot, because all the reviews I watched were like, they weren't talking enough about the plot for me to get it, because there's not that much of a plot to this book. So anyway, I eventually picked up a copy, and I was going to start my, reading 12 books in a year thing. And that's what we're doing now. So I did. I read it. It took me 60 days? Is that how long it took? Okay, now I don't remember. I think it took me 60 days, as in from the day I opened it to the day I finished it, but I only spent like 45 of those 60 days reading it. Anyway, I was reading it actually kind of slowly, like relative to my pace now. I probably could have finished it in a month rather than almost 2. Now I guess I have to do a review of that book instead of, talking about wanting to read it. So that book, I gave it 4.75 stars. And I guess the reason it didn't get a full 5 from me was that for too long in the beginning did the main character feel insufferable, right? I felt too much hatred for the main character for too much of the book before getting through that and getting to the better parts of the book, that it made me want to stop reading it, and it made me think that, oh my goodness, I'm not going to like this book. So I can't give a book 5 stars if for a giant 100-page chunk from page 100 to 200 I was thinking that this book was going to be awful. It thankfully wasn't, but, Also, in terms of crying, everyone's talking, oh, I cried so much during the reading of this book. Not once. I don't really cry when I read books. It didn't really make me feel anything, but most books don't make me feel anything, so I'm not surprised. It was definitely well written. I don't know, it's hard to talk about it because I read it so long ago. Like, the last time I read it was, 6 months ago? And that's 800 pages of stuff to think about. I don't know. I'm just gonna leave you with that I gave it a 4.75. Couldn't quite give it the full 5 stars because, as I said, there was a period where I really hated the main character and I thought the book was gonna be horrible, and then it wasn't. So, I don't know. That's as much as I can tell you without spoiling things, I guess. Not that anyone watching this is ever going to read that book. And that moves us on to our next book, which I do have the paperback copy of. And here we go. The next book I read was this book, My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. And this book is a lot shorter. You can tell that this book is not 800 pages long, and it is not even a third the length of A Little Life. It is this paperback copy, which has much shorter pages than A Little Life's print paperback did, is only 289 pages. So, but word count, 68 to 70,000 words, I think. I don't remember. So it was much, much shorter. And instead of reading this book in 2 months, I read it in a week, maybe just over a week, I think. Maybe this took 7 or 8 days to read. I don't remember. Anyway, I gave this book 5 stars. Now, this book was also recommended by those very 2 same people who I was talking about on YouTube. I gave this book 5 stars because it just has a lot of everything I love. Are there things that could have been better? Yes. Maybe leaning a little more into the attitude of not caring about anything from the main character. This is supposed to be the main character. The main character is not actually described like this. This is just a painting, but I guess it's supposed to reflect her emotional state throughout the book. I mean, I guess the best thing to do would be to read the synopsis for you, because that would actually tell you what it's about without me just rambling. Then I can ramble after. Our narrator should be happy, shouldn't she? She's young, thin, pretty, a recent Columbia graduate, works an easy job at a hip art gallery, lives in an apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, paid for, like the rest of her needs, by her inheritance. But there is a hole in her heart, and isn't it just the Oh, and it isn't just the loss of her parents, or the way her Wall Street boyfriend treats her, or her sadomasochistic relationship with her best friend Riva. It's the year 2000 in a city aglitter with wealth and possibility. What could be so terribly wrong? Both tender and blackly funny, merciless and compassionate, My Year of Rest and Relaxation is a powerful answer to that question and a showcase for the gifts of one of our major writers working at the height of her powers. So, does that tell you enough about this book? I mean, come on. This book, let's just put it this way. In one of the really low reviews I read for this book, after I had finished it on Storygraph, it was talking about how this book could have been super good had it not been for the fact that it was just the narrator kind of whining about life all the time and not being very emotional about anything. That's exactly what I loved about this book. And I have to refer to her as the narrator because she doesn't have a name. The main character, the point of view character, it's written first person past tense. She doesn't have a name. She's never given a name. She's never mentioned with a name. Obviously she has one, and this entire book is basically the story of a woman who decides that she wants to sleep the year away, and so she goes to a doctor who gives her pills to make her do that. But she's kind of lying to this doctor, and the doctor, whose name is Dr. Tuttle, is the most apt comparison I could make. It would be Professor Trelawney. That's the easiest way to think of her without me having to go into detail describing her. But she's like total nonsense. We don't know how she has any kind of doctorate or medical license. She's just prescribing her pills willy-nilly. So she gets all the pills she wants, all the prescriptions, everything she needs to have tons and tons of pills every single day, and basically walk through life like a zombie for an entire year because she thinks that doing this will rejuvenate her or make her reborn after the year is up. She will have spent the last year moping around doing nothing, sleeping all day, watching TV, and after that, all of her life's problems will be fixed. She will get a better job. She won't think about her parents anymore because they're both dead. She won't think about them at all. She won't have to deal with her friend Riva, who she doesn't really like, but is kind of forced to live with. Not live with, but like, bear, I guess, even though she doesn't really like her and she doesn't know how to tell her that, or even when she does, it doesn't really get translated to Riva. And she wants to get over her ex/on and off boyfriend, Trevor. Really, this whole book, I mean, I don't know what I can say. It's the best thing about this book is how funny it is. This book is hilarious the whole time. Like, her descriptions of everything and her extreme laziness and not self-obsession, but, you get what I'm saying. It just makes her a really good character to read. She's a really refreshing character. She's a very original character. She is a very relatable character. I just love everything about her. She carries the whole novel. I mean, obviously, it's about her. And in the end, she gets everything she ever wanted. It works out for her. I mean, she goes through with her year of rest and relaxation, as the title implies, and guess what? She comes out the other side of it totally fine and moving past everything that she said she wanted to. And all it took was a drug-induced sleeping period of her life where she hated everyone around her in different ways and to different degrees. And it's hilarious. What more can I say? I mean, let me just read you this little passage talking about how hilarious this book was. there we go. This is very late in the book, and it's not a spoiler at all. But this is when she's having a conversation with that doctor, Dr. Tuttle, who's prescribing her all these medications because she's basically just asking for them. The doctor says, "Now let me ask you a technical question. Do you have any heroes?" "I guess Whoopi Goldberg is my hero. A family friend. She took care of me after my mother died," I said. Who hadn't heard of Whoopi Goldberg? The way I'm saying it is not translating as well as it does in the book, but that kind of humor is just all throughout the book. Oh my goodness, this book is so hilarious. The main character is so lovable and relatable, and I mean, this book delivers on its premise. So, like, what's not to love? 5 out of 5, right? And that brings us on to our next book. Here it is, The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara. This is written by the same author as A Little Life. What? 2 books by the same author? So close together? Well, not really, because, as I said, I read A Little Life like 6 months ago. So I actually had a lot of time in between reading both of them. Not a lot of reading time, but a lot of just life. Anyway, this is The People in the Trees. This book actually came out directly before A Little Life did. This book released around 2013, with A Little Life coming out in 2015. And the author, Hanya Yanagihara, had actually been working on this book for like 20 years before she wrote it. She wrote it on and off for a long time, rewrote it, everything. And in terms of word count, it's about half the length of A Little Life. So A Little Life, just over 300,000 words. This one is 149,000 words. So it was definitely a lot easier to get through, and it took me 13 days, I think, of reading every night. It was really great. Like, I gave it 4 stars, but trying to explain why it's not a 5-star book is hard. I guess it's mostly to do with the fact that I would have preferred if we were more detached from the main character. Also the fact that I felt I wasn't getting what I expected from this book from certain parts. And it wasn't that I wasn't getting what I expected before I even went into it. I meant I was building expectations from, page 100, and they were never not delivered upon, but they felt like they were being alluded to too much for them to not have come to fruition, I guess is the way you could put it. As I said, with being more detached from the main character, this is a book that is written as a fictional autobiography of sorts by the main character. And I mean, I guess I should read the synopsis, right? The synopsis, though, is for the book, not the autobiography portion, I guess. The synopsis is written by, the real author of the book, not from the perspective of the main character, is what I'm trying to say. In 1950, a young doctor named Norton Purina embarks on an expedition to a remote Micronesian island in search of a rumored lost tribe. There he encounters a strange group of forest dwellers who appear to have attained a form of immortality that preserves the body but not the mind. Purina uncovers their secret and returns with it to America, where he soon finds great success. But his discovery has come at a terrible cost, not only for the islanders, but for Purina himself. Disquieting yet thrilling, The People in the Trees is an anthropological adventure story with a profound and tragic vision of what happens when cultures collide. It marks the debut of a remarkable new voice in American fiction. Now, that synopsis actually talks a lot more about what happens after, the first half of the book. Most of what that synopsis describes happens in the second half of the book, rather than the first. The first section of this book is the, going to this island. Because it's told as an autobiography, we're hearing his whole life story, right? So we get all the points from when he's very, very young and can start remembering things to the very end of him writing in the present almost. when he's like late 70s, I think. Maybe later? I don't remember. So we get everything we want. But the reason that this book isn't a full 5 stars for me is because we're lied to super heavily in this book. Because it's an autobiography of unreliable narrators. 2, actually. You think in the beginning, oh, this is going to be a reliable narrator because there's someone editing this book who puts his notes at the start of the book and at the end. And the way he talks about the main character, who then proceeds to write the rest of the book until the very end, you think, oh, well, if this editor guy is confirming everything he's saying as sort of an outside source, then you think, okay, there's a lot of truth to this. Everything he's saying is fine. The accusations that we get at the start of the novel that he's, done all these things isn't true, right? And throughout the entire novel, that's all you get, that this isn't true, it never happened. And then only at the very end of the novel, the editor says, there was a passage in here that Norton wrote that I chose to take out of the book because I didn't feel like it was really adding anything. And so you're thinking, oh, okay, that's weird. Why? But he's gonna, put the passage in directly after this to read after the end of the book. And you're like, okay, that's weird. And then you read the passage, and the passage is literally confirming everything that this person was accused of. And you realize after reading that the editor knew about it the whole time, and the main character knew about it the whole time. They were just lying to you because they didn't think that it mattered. So you get attached to the character and the editor, who are saying the whole time that all of these accusations are false and we're going to prove it to you through this whole story. And I don't know if we were ever supposed to believe them, but it feels like it's set up that you are supposed to, because I didn't know that this was based on a true story. Apparently it was. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And then they just reveal at the end that they were actually lying the whole time, but to themselves, they didn't think they were lying. They just thought they were removing some of the details, and that he shouldn't be punished for what he did, but he admits that he did it. And you find out that the character who you enjoyed reading from the perspective of for the last 140,000 words was actually really awful and has been omitting details from the entire book. And that's why I'm conflicted, because that sounds like the kind of thing I would write. That sounds like the kind of book that I would write and go like, wow, this is really 5-star material. That you get this betrayal at the end from the main character himself, because you trust him to be a reliable narrator, because for everything he seems to be. And then it just turns out it wasn't true. Whoopsie daisy. Sorry, he was actually lying to you about the nature of all of this, of what he was being accused of, and admits to all of it, but says that he shouldn't be punished for it because it was, his right to do this. So it just makes you feel like you lost that connection to the main character. But unfortunately, what this book fails to do is make you establish yourself with any other characters, which is where this book falls a little flat for me at the end, is that there aren't any characters to fall back on for you to say, now that all of this has been revealed about the main character, at least I have this other character to look through to experience this with again, if we were ever to reread this. Because if you do reread this and you don't have that other character to read about, then you're just reading the story from an unreliable narrator who has done all of these bad things because it's literally told to you at the start of the book, and now you know for sure that they are true because the narrator has confirmed it at the very end of the book. But he's just lying the whole time, and he's actually a really horrible person, but you don't know that for the entire book. So if you didn't have another person to connect with through the book, there'd be no redeeming qualities about ever rereading this. And that's just it. There aren't any other characters to look through the eyes from. There's sort of one who's named Francis Talent, but it's spelled Tallent, so I don't know if it's supposed to be Talent or Talent, but I read it as Talent. He could be that character, but he literally goes missing. Like, the last third of the book, he doesn't exist. Like, he's not a character in the story at all. He goes missing, he presumably has died, and you know nothing about him. Like, he's not in the book enough for me to connect to him as a new main character, to not feel nothing for this book after reading the end, I guess. Which, I mean, to reiterate it, is what makes it so hard to give this book a proper rating, because you'd want to give it a 5 for the execution of everything, but then you feel betrayed, but you feel like you didn't realize you were going to be, so then you're conflicted and you're wondering how your feelings toward the book will affect your rating of it. Because I could see someone giving this a 1-star rating or a 5, but for totally different reasons, which is why I just decided to land on a 4. Just try to be middle of the road. I just realized that I never said that it, talked about it being based on a true story. The author of this book spent 20 years writing it because she needed to wait for the person who this story was based on to die. The main character of that book and in the real story is a Nobel Prize winning scientist, and he's accused of child sexual abuse in the start of the book, but you think the whole time that it's going to be resolved and that, like, he's going to explain to you how that wasn't true. And throughout the entire book, he does explain that, and he gives you very good reason to believe that the whole situation was a lie, until the very end when he confirms that it wasn't a lie at all, but he just doesn't like what he's being accused of. Anyway, so apparently this was all based on a real scientist who won the Nobel Prize, just like the main character, and she had to wait for him to die to get the book published, because otherwise he could sue her for defamation or something, for making a book sort of based on his life. That's all I have to say. This is the first 3 books in my 12 book reading journey for this year, which means I still have 9 books left to read and only 3 months to do that. I'm reading Carrie right now. That's going to be the first book up for the next video when I do the next 3 books. And that's all I'll say about it for now. I do think I am going to be able to finish the challenge by reading 9 more books in the next 3 months. I feel like that is possible based on my current reading speeds if I really go for it. But that's all I have to say for now, and I will see you in part 2 of this 4-part series. Goodbye.